Hi, I'm John Matthews, veteran law enforcement officer, winery owner, and your host for the podcast version of True Crime and Wine. And I'm pleased that you've joined us for this unique podcast where we feature the fascinating world of serial killers while we enjoy award-winning wine. So why serial killers and wine? Well, the answer is simple. I'm the only winemaker in the world that's captured a serial killer. And no, I didn't use wine. So this is real true crime and real wine. And on each episode, myself and Brandy Diamond, the popular podcast host of Texas Wine and True Crime, which you can also hear on all of your favorite platforms, well, she joins me and together we take you on a journey profiling some of the most interesting and intriguing serial killer cases from all around the world. Well, we enjoy our favorite wines. Doesn't get any better than that. Today, we're going to have a special edition on our wine break. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but pour yourself a glass of Killer Cabernet or maybe Murderous Merlot and join us for this podcast version of True Crime and Wine. Now, Brandy, before we dive into Edward Leonski and his lust for a beautiful voice, I have to take care of two personal items here. The first is to give a special shout out to Courtney in Midlothian, Texas, that is. She's a true crime fan, and whenever I see her, she's working and listening to true crime. So, Courtney, thanks for listening to our show. And we love having you and all of our listeners out there. So, Courtney, thank you very much. Now, the second item of business is I want to introduce a very special guest, Shelley Whitmarsh-Beale, an avid true crime lover who will be joining us for this show. Now, Shelley and I will be making a big announcement later in the podcast, but for right now, Shelley, tell us about your love for true crime and what really fascinates you about this genre.
So funny, it started really when I was young. My mom used to read true crime books all the time, and I remember like Anne Rule books all over the house.
Yep.
And my very first book I read was Small Sacrifices, the Diane Downs story. And I just remember thinking, I was like 17 when I read it. I was thinking, what would really just like drive somebody to do that to their own children? I didn't understand it. So what really fascinates me a lot is really the psychology of it and
Yeah.
really trying to get as best you can into the heads of people that do these things you would never fathom doing. So I just think it's fascinating. And really even recently, I think the technology and DNA and the genetic genealogy has really just drawn me in even more. And I listen to a lot of trials and things. So I just love the psychology of it. I love the puzzle of it, trying to help, figure out what's going on. And I'm like every other true crime person out there that's yelling at your television or your,
Yeah.
the thing. I'm like, what is happening? Why are you doing that? So it's just intriguing. I think when you aren't someone that would do something like that, it's just like what makes people tick. So I really am interested in it for that reason. And of course, being drawn in when I was young, starting to listen or read about the true crime
Yeah,
things when I was young.
you and tens of millions of other true crime fans, and they come up to me all the time, and I'm like, why are you into true crime? I'm just trying to figure the killer out. I'm just trying to figure the bad guy out. Why would somebody do that? No, that
Yes.
psychology, it's so fascinating because thankfully, the vast majority of the population doesn't think like that. And we can't even fathom how
No,
somebody else can think like that. So glad
absolutely.
to have you on the
Thank
show.
you.
Great that you're a true crime lover. We love having you here on True Crime and Wine.
Thanks, John.
In this episode, we're going to take you on a journey profiling the life and crimes of Edward Leonski, a serial killer who killed women to steal their voices. I'm not kidding with this one. I want to welcome in my co-host, Brandy Diamond. And Brandy, we all know that these killers have unusual fetishes and behaviors, but this is undoubtedly one of the strangest cases that we've ever covered on this show, because this serial killer preyed on women with beautiful voices, and then he sang after murdering them.
John, how many have we done that they look for similarities that maybe of women in their life that they've had? And I think that's going to come up in this case. They all have their quirks, but I don't know if I have seen one like this, John.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Disney show where that mean lady stole Ariel's voice or something. The witch. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've watched that, but I mean, that's what it reminded me of. It was scary that he wanted to steal women's voices. So we'll be back and find out everything about this and the songs he sang in just a minute.
Okay, John. So today we are talking about Edward Leonski, dubbed a few different names: the singing soldier, the Brownout Strangler. This is Private Edward Joseph Eddie Leonski, born 1917, died 1942. He is an American soldier that committed Australia's first wartime serial killings. Very interesting fact, John. I did not know that. So he is a 24-year-old American GI who murdered 3 women in Melbourne, Australia, over 16 days in May of 1942. My
Incredible.
First question, incredible, right?
The timeline. You're going to ask me about the timeline, right?
I am going to ask you this. Have you seen it any faster, John, than 16 days in any case?
No. When you look for the totality of the crimes that were committed, and the length, that timeline, 16 days, absolutely incredible. He was a killing machine, and if not for a little good luck, good fortune, fate, and good investigation, Lord knows how many people he would have killed. That is incredible, as you know, numbers like that.
So he wasn't your typical sadist, but you mentioned the fetish of voices, right, at the beginning of this. And the bizarre voice fetish was tied to his mother. Not surprised to see that.
Oh no, you saw that coming. I saw that look in your eye during the intro, Brandy, and you knew it was the mom this time, right? Yeah.
Yes. Also, he will eventually be dubbed a mama's boy by his peers. And so bullying, again, we're going to get into some of that early profiling, but he was executed by the U.S. military at the end of all of this, John.
Yeah, also very rare, very different. These crimes were civilian crimes, but the military didn't want any more bodies and any more bad press, and he was given a military trial and executed really quickly. And we'll look at that timeline just a little bit later. But as you said, Brandy, he was born in 1917 in New Jersey. He was the 6th child of Russian Jewish immigrants, and we understand that they were pretty overprotective, pretty controlling, especially his mother. That the household could be really to the point of over controlling and abusive, and I think it really went into the abusive category, an alcoholic household. So we're starting to check a whole lot of boxes here. His brother was institutionalized for mental illness. So now all of a sudden we start seeing that component come in. And going up through school, we always kind of look at their young life and things like that. He was bullied. He was a smaller kid. He was bullied, and they called him a mama's boy. And he had some deep resentment towards his domineering mother, but he loved her voice. Was this, I don't know. I'm not a mom. Brandy was one of these situations where she was domineering during the day and overprotective, and yet saying him to sleep at night.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Storytelling, singing. we're going to find out he did some very interesting things after committing these crimes when it comes to the voice. And, you know, John, I think it's just a motherly, also, your mother has a certain voice, right?
Right.
And another thing we look at with this profiling in his early life is we talk about the fundamentals of growing up, right? And being raised in a certain way. And now you have a domineering mother, but you love your mother, right? And so you try to think good of your mom. And so maybe there was some good things and bad things. Maybe she was a nice alcoholic. I don't know. Maybe her domineering came when it came to him, you know, in school. I mean, so we don't really know, but you can't forget a mom's voice, right? But
no, are you kidding? I hear my
Yeah.
mom's every day.
I know.
Thank God she's still with us.
yeah.
But I hear that, John, in
exactly.
that New York accent, you
Exactly.
can't not get it out of your head. So I guarantee my mother's voice will be with me forever. And maybe this was his fascination to the extreme, right?
Yeah.
To the absolute extreme. Him trying to capture his mother's voice in these other women. Fascinating. We always do fascinating cases, Brandy, but his work life.
Work life. So he did work as a grocery clerk. He was also a delivery boy. But then, just like other serial killers we've seen, John, he decides to join the U.S. Army. And the reason really was to partly escape from his family drama. So to get out of the house, we see this. So February 17, 1941, he joins the military. He is then shipped to Melbourne in January of 1942 with the 52nd Signal Battalion stationed at Camp Pell. So now he's not only out of the family house, he's in another country.
I got to think this has a big impact, right?
Yep.
You've got this domineering, overprotective family. Your adolescent feelings, right, want you to get away. But then when you're away, you're totally isolated and alone with nothing that is familiar to you. Now you're thrust into the military and you're overseas. It has to be culture shock, lifestyle shock, environmental shock, every kind, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk about the characteristics when it comes to growing up, right? We know the kind of home he was in. And then, like you said, isolation, no coping mechanisms, right? Like maybe he doesn't have the ability to adjust to change well. And so he has to then take it out, just like we're going to see him do. So, but what are you picking up early on in profiling with this?
Well, a couple of things that, we know about him is even though he was bullied, he was a fairly, smiling, charming kid. We've seen that with how many, serial killers. Matter of fact, his military buddies, the people that knew him, kind of nicknamed him the Smiling Soldier. So he had a smile on his face and had a certain charm about him. He was able to communicate. Oh, wow, Brandy, I'm going down the boxes right now. I mean, this is our typical profile: charismatic, smiling, good communication skills.
Yep.
He got a little bigger, a little stronger in his late high school years, and going into the military, he actually became a bodybuilder and a boxer. So he had some skills, defensive skills. He loved singing. We know that. And so he took his mother's love of singing and certainly picked it up. But he also picked up, I think, their love of drinking. He was a heavy drinker, and a lot of his military mates said he had almost a Jekyll and Hyde personality, that when he drank, he became really aggressive and really violent, especially to women. He had no prior crimes that we know of and no prior murders at this point. But when I'm getting the list out, right? We got our profiler's notebook out and we're starting to check it. Substance abuser parents, we can check that box. Abusive family members, we're checking that box. Brandy, I'm going to go ahead and check the mental health issues because of the brother.
Yep. I was actually thinking about that. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
sometimes we see it in the family, and I'm going to check that box too.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into traumatic brain injury. We don't know anything about that. Physical characteristics, he started to develop that size and that bodybuilder and the boxing. And so now we have somebody that is kind of growing into their body, getting handsome. We know he's charming. We know he's smiling. We know the women are going to love him being charming and smiling. Don't really know anything about his grades or intelligence level yet, but we do know that he is outgoing and charismatic. Not going to check anything on animal abuse or pornography or petty crimes. So on, some of the characteristics, they're very, very obvious, stick out to me. I'm checking those boxes. I'm marking them. And on a couple others, they're not like the typical serial killer that we cover, where how many have we had where I'm checking every box and saying, Brandy, do you have another piece of paper? Because I'm continuing here.
Yeah. Well, and I think it really was the childhood piece that sticks out to me the most. He joins the military, maybe again, hoping to escape his child life, and maybe meet different people. You're in a new country, new change. But John, as you know, going through some of this as a kid, you don't adjust well to society. You were bullied. Maybe you had some defense mechanisms come up because of what you had to deal with in your household. So, he's just not adjusting well. But some of those boxes are definitely getting checked. Okay, when we started talking about this, I mentioned he was the Brownout Strangler. So for our listeners, this is a very interesting thing. This is actually, they called it the Brownout because they dimmed the street lights to hide from Japanese aircraft. But this is when he actually started committing his crimes, John.
Yeah, you've got to remember, this is Melbourne, Australia, very close to Japan. And they're worried about the World War II, the airstrikes that were going on. And not unlike, England, France, and other European nations that had brownouts, that everyone would dim the lights, turn off the lights, make them less of a target. They did this in the streets of Melbourne, which is, one of the two major cities in Australia. So during these brownout periods, you had soldiers out protecting the neighborhoods, protecting the communities out on the street. They weren't just in the base, but you also had the soldiers that were not working out partying. And to this day, there are sections of Melbourne and Sydney, and I've been there, where the soldiers that are stationed there, they kind of just go out into these known areas, and that's where they party. And these women, Australian women, would often go out and party with the soldiers. Sometimes they would go out in groups, sometimes they'd go out alone. Not a good mixture, right? A soldier away from home, lonely, drinking, partying, women that are out there trying to look to entertain the soldiers, probably not good. We know Leonski prowled the streets after he had been drinking, and he'd listen to the people in the bars, to the people in the crowd, and he targeted voices that reminded him of his mother.
Okay, so we talk about stalking sometimes. This reminds me, can you imagine, we talk about the fact of like when you're stalked, a lot of people don't know they're being stalked and then they become victim of crimes. Imagine being stalked for your voice and you have no idea. Somebody is listening for that. As a person, that is just scary and very different.
And how easy is that, right?
I know.
Think about it, Brandy. You're in a restaurant with your husband. Yeah. And you're just talking, your daughter's there, whatever. You're maybe not all made up or dressed beautiful. You're just out for an evening with your family.
Crazy.
And somebody hears your voice. And go, hey, I love that look on your face.
And because we're podcasters, we've got good voices,
Oh, yeah. They hear your voice, and it's like, oh, my gosh, I've got to have that voice.
Oh, you just gave me goosebumps. Let's move on, John.
It really was like that Ursula Ariel type thing, decades before Disney came up with it. He wanted to capture her voice, right? So he heard a voice that reminded him of his mother, and he wanted to internalize that. Kind of like Ed Gein, right? Was digging up bodies that looked like his mother because he wanted to internalize it. So again, you can't think as a rational person.
Yeah.
He wanted to make that voice a part of him, and the way to do it is to take it away from others.
Right, which is very strange because you would think the opposite, but
Yep.
because his action is completely opposite of what he's actually thinking about the voice.
Well, okay.
very
So
interesting.
let me just make a comment about that. That really
Please.
goes into profiling, right? And I was teaching this week with some officers, and I said, basically, first thing, do not make any assumptions about anything. We're going to look at the facts, and we're going to let them take us towards this potential killer. And one of the officers at one point, several hours into the training, well, I think this, and this. And I said, see, that's why you're going down the wrong path. And that's why you're never going to catch this guy. So thinking, oh, he hated his mother's voice, and the exact opposite was actually true. So as a profiler, we can't just jump and think what a normal person might think, because the vast majority of the time you're going to be going down the wrong road. So going back to the brownouts just for a quick, Brandy,
Yeah.
Can you imagine the city and it's darker. Most of the lights are turned off, kind of a dim setting. It's already perfect for an attack on women.
Yep.
He's out there stalking them and listening to their voice.
Well, unfortunately, he finds his first victim, Ivy McLeod, white female, 40 years old. May 3rd, this is in 1942. She is actually waiting for a train in the early morning hours. And this is actually during that brownout hours that we spoke about. Now, she had this strong, mature voice that reminded him of his mother. So
there you go.
He approaches her, strangled her in the doorway of a shop near Bleak House Hotel, beat her, left her for dead, partially naked after beating her. And a witness saw this American soldier staring at the body and leaving the scene.
Yeah. And I think, we talked about this really close 16-day period of these murders. He cared nothing about who was there, who was watching, witnesses, anything else. And he was seen multiple times. And because of that, it allowed the police to wrap up this case much more quickly than they would have. So this is not, I'm going to drag her into the bushes. I'm going to hide the body, bury the body. I'm going to wear clothing that they can't tell who I am. Anything like that. This was a very, very overt, conspicuous crime, given that it was committed during the brownout.
Well, and he also had some words about this eventually, John. He said, I started to walk up the street and saw a girl in the doorway. She had a bag. She said something and smiled, and I said something about her bag. I walked over, felt it. It was very soft. Interesting. She stepped back in the doorway and I followed her and grabbed her by the neck and I choked her. She fell and I fell on top of her. I started to rip her clothes. I ripped them, but I couldn't rip her belt, so I left it and came back to it. Then I went mad and thought, I've got to rip it. I ripped it and ripped it.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is where the beating came in. This is obviously where the homicide came in. And he didn't mention anything at this point about singing. But what we do know is he actually sat with each of his victims after he killed them and sang.
Sang to them?
He felt that he stole their voice and he sang.
Oh my gosh.
All right, about time for a wine break and a big announcement coming up, and then we'll get back to this very unique killer. Now, on each episode of True Crime and Wine, we feature a wine break, but this break is going to be very different and very special because I'm so excited to announce the debut of our partnership with Wine Shop at Home and the launch of our new co-branded line of True Crime and Wine wines. And to assist me with this announcement, I'm bringing back in Shelley Whitmarsh-Beal, the Vice President of Sales for Wine Shop at Home, and maybe more importantly, I don't know, an avid true crime lover. Shelley, welcome to the show, and let's take everybody back to where the seeds of this partnership first were planted, and that was last year at CrimeCon in Denver.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I was walking around Creator Row and I saw your booth and you had this t-shirt and I was with my best friend. We go every year. I grew up in Las Vegas. She's from Vegas too. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have that shirt because it was made for me basically because I work for a wine company and I love true crime. And then the next day I was in the elevator and you happened to be in the elevator too. And I had your shirt on. And I said, I
Yeah.
bought this shirt from your booth yesterday. And we started talking, and I let you know that I work for a wine company out of Napa, and we do in-home wine tastings. And I have a sales field that I support that goes and does that. And we just started talking, and you gave me your card, and you're like, we should work together and try to figure something out. Crazy enough, when I got back home, I was talking to my boss, and you had done an event at his family's winery in Texas. And he had
Yes.
actually told me about you before I went to CrimeCon, but I didn't connect all the dots. So I'm like, we have got to do something with him because I've really been wanting to do one.
It was almost fate, wasn't it?
It was. And I was going to say,
how your boss, how your boss knew me, how you knew me, how you ran into me. Yeah, it absolutely hysterical to me how sometimes things just like perfectly work out, right?
Yeah, I think we were waiting to connect with you, John, to make this happen. We've been talking about it for a few years because I go to CrimeCon every year and they would kind of laugh at me. And I'm like, no, this is huge. I promise you, we have to do this. So I just think it was the timing. And so I know myself and the rest of the Wine Shop at Home team were so excited about this launch. So we're so happy to be partnered with you and making this happen. I can't wait for it to be out there.
Yeah, it's great. So from that first meeting in an elevator, look what we accomplished in
I
1
know.
year. I mean,
know.
that's really amazing when you talk about the wine industry, not only how slow the industry moves and evolves, but it's part of the whole wine culture. You know, you never rush wine. And I think it's amazing what we've accomplished in a year. And I want to dive into these wines for just a minute, and then we'll circle back around. But this is going to be a brand new series. And the series is called The Investigation. And for the next just couple of minutes, give me a chance. I want to take the listeners and the viewers through this 6 wine series called The Investigation because I'm so psyched about it. And in future episodes, we're going to do just like we've done with the Casaro wines. I'm going to take one bottle at a time. I'm going to drink it. We're going to enjoy it together. We'll talk about everything in detail about the wine notes, the tasting notes, and everything that our true crime lovers and wine lovers would like to know about. So the first wine that I want to talk about in the investigation series is a Russian River Valley AVA. So for those non-wine enthusiasts out there, that's American viticultural area. And it's called Beyond a Doubt Pinot Noir. Beyond a doubt. I love the names of each one of these wines in the investigation series. And our Pinot Noir is layered with aromas of blackberry, cranberry, pomegranate, and little hints of lemon zest that unfold into a lush and round Pinot that is braced with some bright acidity. So a wonderful Pinot Noir that we're going to introduce to you, and everybody can order it very, very shortly. We're going to have the link up in each one of the podcast descriptions. We'll have the link up in all of the social media. But first one, beyond a doubt, Pinot Noir. Any comment about that one, Shelley?
Well, I think that people that really love those bold reds are going to love this one. So our Pinot is usually really popular amongst our sales field too, and of course their customers. So I think the true crime fans are really gonna love it for those dry wine drinkers, dry reds.
And we've got, don't we have a little game on the label that they get to play?
Yes, it's so cool when you get all 6 bottles. There's going to be a total of 6 bottles at the end of this. There's clues on the back, so there's like a word. There's different letters, and then when you have all 6 bottles, you're able to basically go and break out those letters and see what the clue is. So kind of fun, just a little interactive game for people to get. And of course, you're going to want all the bottles anyway, so you might as well try to play the game. So it's going to be cool. We have a lot of fun things planned.
You're going to want them for your collection. I can tell you, there are people that come into my winery and buy the True Crime and Wine branded wines, and they're like, I just want to put this on my shelf, or I want to show it to my friends. I go, drink it, then put the bottle on your shelf.
Exactly.
But yeah, the next one I want to introduce is our Perfect Alibi. Oh, I love it. Perfect Alibi Pinot Grigio. Great option for outdoor gatherings, especially if you're surrounded by witnesses. I mean, friends and family. Sorry. Friends and family. This Oregon Pinot Grigio with tropical fruit, floral characteristics like daffodil, peach, pineapple, apricot, and apple. And Perfect Alibi, you're going to get some minerality that may remind you of flint or gunpowder. I thought that was perfect for a True Crime and Wine brand. But that's also very common, if you don't know it, a common characteristics for this varietal. So the second wine is going to be Perfect Alibi Pinot Grigio. And I think folks are just going to really love sitting out by the pool and listening to the True Crime and Wine podcast and drinking the Pinot Grigio. The third wine that we're going to roll out is called Above Suspicion. Above Suspicion, and it's a sweet rosé with a little bit of Myers lemon notes and raspberry aromas, and the mouth has flavors of strawberry and citrus. It's kind of a medium intensity wine, but really, really well balanced between the sweetness, the alcohol, the acidity, that it's almost suspicious. But yeah, Above Suspicion. I think, Shelley, a lot of folks love rosés,
Yes.
and I think this is going to hit the spot with them. What do you think?
I think it's perfect for summer. It's probably what you'll call maybe a porch pounder. That's what we hear a lot of times. I tend to like a little bit on the sweeter side, so I absolutely know I'm going to love it. So I think it's for those just a little bit of sweet, and love that rosé, and the beautiful color of it, of course, is just so complements summer.
Oh, yeah, it makes you think of summer just looking at it and
Yes.
then having a sip. And what wine collection, what wine series would, be complete without a Cabernet Sauvignon? So we actually have a Cabernet Sauvignon, and absolutely wonderful, bold, expressive, rich aromas of blackberry and dark cherry with some hint of mocha and cedar. So I think this cab, this usual suspect cab, is one that you're going to want to have on your wine rack. Just a really solid cab. And I've had the pleasure of working and with the other winemakers and making sure that these wines are where we really want them to be. And you're not going to go wrong with this cab. And finally, and I want to get your comment on this, because it's almost like I see your picture when I talk about this bottle, Shelley. And you know which one I mean. It is our True Crime Queen
Yes.
Semi-Secco sparkling wine, right? And I kind of just see you sitting there in your living room with your tiara. That's what I
Yes.
think about, right? A true crime queen. It's got some aromas of green apple, pears, and flowers, a little bit of orange and lemon zest in it. Very pleasant, good acidity. This is a medium-bodied wine that you're going to want to serve ice cold. Who doesn't love a sparkling wine? Tell us what you think about this new true crime queen, Shelley.
All right. So I've had the pleasure of trying this wine and I love it. I love, love, love a good sparkling. And the name was so fun to come up with. People are going to buy it for the name, of course, and the beautiful sparkling inside of it. So I think it's
Because
going to be a hit.
everybody thinks they're a true crime queen, right?
Yes, they do. Yes.
Yes,
I think it's going
yes.
to be a hit. Yes, a huge hit.
I might even see a new T-shirt coming out of this, Shelley. I don't know, but
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. I'd buy that shirt from your booth too. Yeah.
There you go. Oh, and I will be at CrimeCon again in just a couple of weeks. End of May, we have CrimeCon in Vegas. I do have another shirt for you, Shelley.
Oh, yay.
But I just want to let the listeners and viewers know that, again, I'm going to be discussing each one of these wines in detail in future episodes. We're going to be reviewing the wine notes, the appellations that the wines are from, the alcohol content, and the other. We're even going to give you some pairing ideas and some recipes that I think we can link on here in the coming episodes. But we wanted to give you this teaser today because these wines are going to be out soon. And the other thing, if I didn't mention, and I'm really excited about this, is that for every bottle purchased, $1 is going to be donated to the DNA Doe Project, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to restoring the names and identities of Jane and John Does via investigative genetic genealogy. And as you said earlier, Shelley, that part fascinates you also. And Brandy and I talk about it on the show all the time. The advances in DNA, in genetic genealogy, and all of the different fields that are allowing us to close cases, give closure to families, and add on sentences to those bad guys out there. So I know you're excited about this also, but we're giving $1 to the DNA Doe Project, and I'll be talking about them more as we go on. And finally, everyone will be able to clip the description of the podcast in each of your podcast platforms. We'll have a QR code or a link where you can order these wines. We'll also have links in all of our social media. So we want everybody going out there and ordering this amazing new series called The Investigation. And Shelley, thank you for helping me introduce it. Any final words on The Investigation, the series, or the wines?
We have one more coming out. We won't share, but I think everybody's going to go nuts over the name of it, John. And I can't wait for that one to be released. They're just finalizing some things. So I think that one will be out pretty soon, right there in the beginning of June. So that'll be awesome. And also, everybody is also able to, if they'd like to, do a true crime wine tasting. So our consultants do in-home wine tastings, and we're going to have a special collection of just the investigation to do an in-home wine tasting. And that link you're going to click on, there's some information about doing that as well. So I think that'll be so fun. And we're creating some really cool components around it and doing those tastings with this wonderful line of new wines.
Great. Well, Shelley, glad to have you on here. This was the longest wine break I've ever done, but I think it's well worth it. I'm so excited. This has been a year-long project, and to launch this new True Crime and Wine co-branded product, The Investigation, I think our true crime lovers are going to love it, and I think our wine lovers are really going to enjoy these great wines. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, John.
All right, John. So let's go back to the profiling piece of this for just a minute. What are you seeing as an MO here?
Well, these are opportunistic attacks. He's stalking these women. He's hearing their voice. So he's not targeting a certain, type of woman. I only go after redheads. I only go after blue-eyed blondes. I only go after women that look like my mother. So the physical characteristics, the age, the height, the weight really didn't mean anything to him. It was the voice. It was the voice he was listening for. Now, each of these murders was very, very personal, Brandy. We know that because he strangled him barehanded. And you remember, he was a bodybuilder. He was a boxer, very, very strong hands. And so the killings were very personal, almost like he was shaking. Brandy can see this on the screen, folks, if you can't. I'm choking myself. Almost like he's choking the victim, strangling her to get her voice.
Yes, that's
Right?
exactly what I was just thinking. Like that, the intentionality. I mean, first of all, we know how hard it is to strangle someone and how long it takes for them to actually die. So that is a very personal way to kill someone. You're looking directly into their eyes. You have their hands wrapped around their neck. And again, it goes back to what we talked about of he's going for the voice. I mean, we're not seeing knives. We're not seeing guns. We are seeing hands around the throat, which is, again, a very specific and intimate way to kill someone.
Yeah. He then would partially undress them. And I don't really know at this point, was he trying to humiliate him? Was he, afterwards, I've got the voice and now it's my mother and I want to kill her. But there was never any rape. So there was a sexual component in exposing the genitals, but there was no rape. There was no cutting of the genitals, biting of the genitals, anything like that, which is very common, as you know. He left the body exposed. No attempt to hide it. And he stayed nearby, singing and laughing. And he really didn't care if anyone saw him.
John, I'm thinking mental illness here. I just, I don't know. Something just, I mean, for him to not care about being seen and be so nonchalant about it and then to start singing and laughing, I mean, I don't know if that's schizophrenic.
But look at
That's
the
kind of where I was.
planning. Look
Oh,
at the
that's so true.
preparation.
Yeah.
Look at the stalking. Look at,
Yeah.
he's got a very specific victimology. If you're mentally ill, can you stay with a very specific victimology like that? And he does it during the brownouts,
Very organized. Very
yeah.
organized. Yes.
So I'm not sure if I agree with that right there.
I don't know. It's such a
Now-
weird fetish. I don't know. Just such a strange thing.
One that we hardly ever see. And I
Yeah.
think that's why it's so hard to explain, right?
Right.
He did have this voice fetish, and his goal was to steal their voices. And it, researchers have said this is kind of a symbolic matricide based on his overprotective mother who had a strong singing voice. So it's like he wants the voice. He wants to hear his mother's voice, but she was so overprotective and so abusive and maybe, such an alcoholic that there were other qualities, and those other qualities manifested himself in him strangling these women.
Yeah.
It was almost like he was screaming, I want your voice. I want that soothing voice, but I don't want the rest of it.
Well, John, he went after a talented singer, so not surprised about that. I was waiting for like a karaoke night or like him going to some sort of, performance at a woman singing. So Pauline Thompson, white female, 31 years old. This is May 9th, 1942. Remember, everyone, this happens in a 16-day period of these attacks. Talented singer who performed for the troops. She was known as independent and outgoing. She is out for a night on the town. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you interpret that as a woman? Because I know I interpret it differently as a man.
What, independent and outgoing?
Yeah.
So I'm going to say in 1942, you have someone singing for the troops. I'm going to say that women were probably very more sexualized then, and probably represented something, especially for military men. Out for a night on the town, maybe wants to meet a military man herself. So but she's seen drinking gin with Leonski, so she meets the wrong guy that night, John.
That's right. No, I think you hit it on the nose. I think you hit it on the nose, Brandy. And she was out looking for a good time, maybe wanted to find a military man, one of the guys that she had been entertaining. Unfortunately, she ended up with the smiling and charming Leonski. Right? And they went to a bar and they started drinking gin. And again, lots of witnesses, lots of people saw him. They weren't trying to cover that up at all. And little did she know that he was going to go after her for her voice. Now, they found her body later on outside the city, outside her boarding house on Spring Street. She had been beaten like the last victim. She had been strangled just like the last victim. Her body had been left exposed just like the last victim. So, this is all following a very, very specific pre-planned pattern that leads us away from mental illness. They noted the bruises matched someone that was strong and had large hands. And remember what he did previously? Bodybuilder and a boxer, right?
Right.
But he was also very, he wasn't very careful. He left the bodies exposed. He really didn't care about witnesses. He didn't care about evidence either. So there was a disorganized side to these crimes. And he left mud from his boots, his military-issued boots, at the scene. And when they asked him about it later on, not only did he admit to being there and doing it, but he admitted to sitting with her and singing after he killed her.
And also while he was doing it, John, that just gave me the creeps.
Yes.
I mean, imagine, your life is ending. And he's probably strangling her and singing to her at the same time because she has no voice at that point.
Lord, I hope if it happens to me, somebody's singing something like Ave Maria or something that at least, helps me get to where I need to go. I don't want to hear the theme song from Wizard of Oz and that, So yes. I hope it's a good song. Now, I'm making light of it, but he actually said he remembered singing in her ear to her. He remembered that she had a very nice voice. She was an entertainer, right? She was a singer. And they came to a long flight of stone steps. He grabbed her by the throat and he wanted her to keep singing. So she was singing for him. He began choking her. And he thought, well, how could she keep singing if I choke her? Then he thought to himself, wow, I'm a murderer. I guess killing her was the hardest because she was strong and she could drink gin and she had a beautiful voice. She told me I had a baby face, but I guess I'm wicked underneath.
John, nobody's going to want to ever date again after this episode. Nobody's going to ever want to, especially charismatic, good looking, generous men.
Strong. Yeah.
Strong,
Well, in that case, I want to say hi to my daughter, Bella, that I hope she's listening.
Okay, loose lips. Who had loose lips? Leonski admitted to another soldier. So he starts talking about what he's done, that he killed 2 women. So he immediately admits this. Now, when the soldier told Leonski to give himself up, plead temporary insanity, he refused to do so. Then soldier never followed up on the conversation. John, how many times have we seen the ball dropped in these cases?
Yep. Yeah. Information. And he was apparently very specific about it. Did the soldier think he was drunk? Did the soldier think he was trying to be, a braggart or, something like that? We don't know, right? And again, you don't want to blame it on somebody like that. But again, it's a missed opportunity. 2 women are already dead. He's going to continue to kill. And the soldier didn't report it, didn't tell anybody until after the fact. And Leonski kept killing.
Okay, so we've talked about motive, the voice fetish, and I think we know that was the number 1 motive in these crimes.
Oh, yeah.
wanted to steal their voices, wanted to kill them because they reminded him of his mother. Like you said, it's totally Ed Gein, pulling up the bodies, and then needing to keep a little souvenir by using their skin to make different pieces of furniture around his home. So took it even a step further. Every time he killed his victims, he felt like he was killing his mother. I found that very interesting. Did he say that in his words? Is that what they just sort of assumed once talking to him about these crimes?
Well, if you look at the killer's MO, the victimology, the behaviors, he targeted. He didn't go after what is usually our victim pool, right?
Right.
He wasn't going after prostitutes that are obviously out there with the soldiers anyway. He wasn't going after 18 and 19 and 20-year-old girls, you know, which is a very common victim pool.
Mhm.
He was targeting women like his mother, quite frankly. Independent, older, and by older, we're talking about, you got to remember, he's a very young person, 31 to 41. But the key feature was their strong but pleasant voices. And he would start drinking and go walking at night and find them. They were like blitz attacks, as we've seen, with his large, powerful hands. He left them partially naked, probably to degrade them, but there was no sexual assault. There was no connection between the victims. Right. So
Gary.
we're not, a lot of times when we do profiling, we look at victimology. We're kind of trying to decide, you know, is he going after a certain type, a certain culture, a certain club, a certain workplace? You know, what is it? But there really was no tie between the victims, except that he loved their voices and wanted to capture those voices. And he laughed or sang or both after the attacks. Before what we learn, he just casually got up and walked away.
Yeah.
He didn't run. He didn't try to hide. He just, when he was done with them, when he was done with the song, he got up and walked away.
Well, John, we have a third victim, Gladys
Yep.
Hosking, white female, 41 years old, May 18th, 1942. This was a university chemistry library worker. Again, independent woman, well-liked. She is walking home through the park, and the mature voice that she carried triggered the mother complex. He sees her, finds her, and this is during the brownout period, strangles her, and leaves her body partially nude.
And you wonder, how can this happen? You got to remember, this is the midst of World War II. The soldiers over there protecting the citizens.
Yep.
The soldiers are on patrol, you know, out there constantly. So seeing a soldier in a park or walking through a park, or how you doing, ma'am? Just want to check on you, want to make sure okay. You know, probably don't be out here alone. You know, whatever, right? We know he was charming. We know he smiled. And then when she responded, hearing that voice is what triggered it. And it almost makes me think, now we haven't recorded this show yet, the Alphabet Killer, but we're going to get to it. And the alliteration of the names. You never know. You never know what triggers these guys. And with them, it was her voice. They did discover her body in a muddy air raid trench that had been dug inside a fence near the camp. And of course, she had been strangled and was partially undressed. Later, when they asked him about the crime, he said it was raining. I asked her if I could go home with her. She apparently agreed, at least to some extent. Yeah. She walked with me to a very dark place on Lighthouse Street. She turned to go, maybe it wasn't going to work out, and I grabbed her. I wanted her voice, so I grabbed her by the throat. Exactly what we said. Exactly what we said earlier, Brandy. And she was soft and didn't make a sound. He strangled her, carried her up to the hillside, and went on the slope in the mud. She was still making gurgling sounds. So I pulled her dress over her face and smuggled her. Smothered. Did I say smuggled? Smothered her to death.
It's just terrible. But hey, you know what? The fact that he fell and slipped in that mud, though, will pay off because another soldier actually sees him. Because after this crime, John, the Australian police start canvassing the area.
Yep.
And another soldier, Neil Seymour, he actually states that the night before he saw Leonski covered in mud and asking for directions back to camp, which I also found kind of interesting. Maybe he didn't know where he was at the time or because of,
drunk,
drunk. Yeah.
disoriented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So military police then went to Leonski's tent where they found him covered in mud still. And with this unique yellow clay from the trench where they actually had found
the body.
The body was actually in his tent.
In his tent.
So transferred the evidence from her body into where he was actually staying.
Right. Like the serial killer that I captured, the evidence had been transferred not only in his house, but in his living room and in his vacuum cleaner when he was trying to clean up. So we see this tie-in. There's another witness. I think we've had a witness at every scene, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And the witness this time comes forward. The police now having a third body on their hands are going, wait a minute. It was an American soldier covered in mud. That can't be too hard to find.
Yep.
And so the military police actually the next morning went into his tent where he was probably still passed out from being drunk the night before. And they found the yellow clay, which tied him directly to not only, Hoskins, but we later find out that some of that mud in his tent came from the Thompson site and then, of course, tied to McLeod. Wow. So, we have it kind of all coming together here. He was very... to kind of sum up the profiling, he was very organized in his approach. He prowled at night and hunted, but his attacks were very impulsive. It was a hybrid between a fetish, the voice he wanted from his mother, and yet killing the victim almost symbolized him killing his mother. And he certainly had an obsession with that. We know he strangled his victims, very personal, getting that voice out of their throat. He was charming, manipulative, but showed no remorse, no empathy, was cold and calculating. And even after his arrest, we know that he sang, well, he confessed to the details of this.
What? Like saying, that's okay.
If
you say there's no mental illness, okay.
Once they found him in the tent with the mud, right?
Right, that's right. They've got him.
They got him. The military police, hey, we got you. We're tying you to this one body. It's not going to be hard to tie him to the others. He immediately confessed, Brandy.
Is he mocking? Is this a sort of like singing while confessing, sort of a braggadocious move?
Yeah, okay. Not mocking, but more braggadocious.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, so during the confession, the military police are taking the statement. They're asking about the crimes, and he's telling them, right? Because, originally, they only knew about the third victim, right? From the soldier that saw him, the mud.
Yep.
But he confesses to all three of them over the last 16 days. And not only does he confess with no empathy and no remorse, like we've seen over and over again, he actually sings and laughs while recounting the crimes. Who else did that? The giggling grandma. Yep. Remember, we covered that case, and during her confession, that's how she got the nickname. She giggled and laughed. He is laughing and singing.
Well, they started to build this case. He admitted to the crimes. There were multiple survivors and witnesses that described the same cheerful American, right? Again, very persuasive and charming. Uncle of an attacked woman ID'd Leonski in a lineup. There's nothing like a sighting of a crime and a person, being able to ID them once you see them in a lineup. And that yellow clay evidence from Hoskins' scene, again, was found in his tent. So they've got him, John, right? They're starting to put these pieces together.
Yeah, no, and that kind of goes back to him being sloppy and not caring if witnesses saw him, because there was witnesses at every murder, literally, that saw him and were able to identify him later on. So building the case was really easy on this guy. He and his attorney said, "Oh, it wasn't me. I had a dual personality."
Oh.
And another private even testified to that, saying, well, when he gets drunk, his voice does change. He talks more like a girl.
Okay.
He talks about poltergeist, werewolves, demons, and creepy stuff. It's almost like he's talking to somebody else.
Okay, so I didn't hit the mental illness, but I did hit the multiple personality button.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Or maybe because during his trial, and let me just get back to his trial here. He was tried on July 17th in 1942 in U.S. military court in Australia. Now, you got to remember, this is the first time that any person has ever been tried in this country by a military tribunal for a crime that violated civilian law.
Okay.
So this is raising a bunch of red flags for me that the military did not want they wanted this case over.
Yeah.
And they wanted it over quickly.
Yeah.
And they did not like the bad press of a soldier, a U.S. soldier who's over in a foreign country trying to supposedly protecting the foreign country, praying and killing its women.
Yeah.
So the trial was quick. Sanity was debated, but he was ruled fit, that he knew what he was doing. And he was found guilty of all 3 premeditated murders.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the execution was pretty quick.
Yes.
They did not wait. Look at how many years, decades we wait.
Decades.
It wasn't even the end of 1942. The murders were convicted. He was captured. He was tried, sentenced, convicted, and on December 9th, 1942, they hanged him in Pentridge Prison. It was the first and only military execution during World War II and the first and only foreign execution in Australia. And they buried his remains in a military cemetery in Honolulu. So
this was a very unique case and highly unusual. We talked about the voice fetish relating to the mother. What else are you kind of picking up from this very unusual case? And another thing I thought of is the execution. So it reminded me, I was actually in Brownwood, Texas, and I was interviewing some winemakers, and they got access to the jail, the old jail that's in Brownwood. And they actually showed us where they used to drop the bottom of the ceiling and they would hang people right then and there. And so I think about the hangings and how fast this used to move. And John, like we said today, decades. We don't want people that are on death row if they're innocent, right? So thankfully we have appeals and those things to make sure that people are being put to death that should be put to death. But my gosh, can we talk about the dollars it takes to keep those people on death row year after year? So, you know, very different nowadays than it used to be.
Yeah, and I can't help but think, but like I said, very bad press for the U.S. military, very bad press for the U.S. government. They wanted this case done. They wanted it over. Thankfully, they had a ton of forensic evidence. They had a ton of witnesses, and they had a serial killer who confessed to not only murdering this woman, but to stealing their voices, as he said, and sitting and singing to them after he killed them. as we put a cork in this edition of the True Crime and Wine podcast, I want to remind all of our listeners you can follow us on all of our social pages, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at JJ True Crime and Wine, at JJ True Crime and Wine. And we're going to put a link to order all of the wines that we introduced today, both in our social media bios and on each of the podcast platforms, so that you can enjoy all of the investigation branded wines. Yes, all of those new True Crime and Wine wines. And you can profile killers in each show along with Brandy and I. So order the wines and enjoy True Crime and Wine with Brandy and I. Now, I think that wraps up all of the business we needed to take care of today. And I want to thank one more time Shelley Whitmarsh Beal for being our special guest today and for launching this new brand of wines. Also, my co-host, Brandy Diamond, for joining me on this journey. And, of course, our producer, Lauren Bedsole, back in the Corsicana Command Center for helping to make this show possible. And I invite you to join us for the next episode where we feature a unique serial killer who earned his nickname by taking a 14-year hiatus from killing. But did he really? I'm John Matthews, and thank you for joining us for True Crime and Wine, the podcast. Salute.